invite you to stand as you are able for the reading of the gospel. The Holy Gospel is according to Mark, the 9th chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. John said to Jesus, "Teacher, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he was not following us." But Jesus said, "Do not stop him, for no one who does a deed of power in my name will be able soon afterward to speak evil of me. Whoever is not against us is for us. For truly I tell you, whoever gives you a cup of water to drink because you bear the name of Christ will by no means lose the reward. If any of you put a stumbling block before one of these little ones who believe in me, it would be better for you if a great millstone were hung around your neck and you were thrown into the sea. If your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life maimed than to have two hands and to go to hell, to the unquenchable fire. And if your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life lame than to have 2 feet and to be thrown into hell. And if your eye causes you to stumble, tear it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with 1 eye than to have 2 eyes and to be thrown into hell, where their worm never dies and the fire is never quenched. For everyone will be salted with fire. Salt is good, but if salt has lost its saltiness, how can you season it? Have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another." This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. You may be seated. So I'm not going to make you come up here, Brandon, but if you want to come up and grab a piece of paper after I tell you, want to come on up? Come on up. I didn't know if you would want to be willing to do that. He's the soul kiddo willing to come out early morning today. So we're going to talk about salt, first of all. Do you like salt? Nah, not really. You don't need a lot of salt on your food yet or anything. All right. Well, what we're going to talk about is what it means to be salt. Jesus tells us to be salt. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I wanted to share one way that we can be salt. Is the writer from James was talking about how we take care of each other. And what he talked about was praying for each other. And so I wanted to talk to you about praying. Now, I'm sure you used to do these probably when you were younger. I always called them like the doodle picture, where you take a line and you just doodle like this until you come up with it. You know what I mean, my black line here, right? What do you call it? Do you have a name for it? I just called it a doodle thing. And you can see what I did was I made a little doodle picture, and then inside I thought about who do I want to pray for and who do I need to pray for. So like in one of my circles I put down the Sunday school and the middle school and the high school students, praying for all of you young people for all sorts of reasons, that you're able to learn and that you like coming to church and that you stay healthy in school and all those things. I put Jan and Amy in another one. They're the people that I work with here at church, and I'm very grateful for everything they do. I put down Haiti and all the people of Haiti. It's just struggling after their earthquake. They have lots of issues. I put down the musicians. I'm grateful for the way they always help contribute. So you get people who were ill and all that. So I filled up my little picture with people that I can pray for, because that's one of the things that we are asked to do. So I was going to give you, I got a piece of cardboard so you can write on it, okay? And a piece of paper and some crayons. And if you want to go back and make your own little doodle picture and think about who you want to pray for, I'll let you do that. How's that sound? All right. Is a publication that comes out of the University of Chicago Divinity School, and Theology of Ethics professor William Schweiker had an article in that little e-magazine this week, and this is how he began his article. From passing conversations on the street to extended news commentaries on air and online, it is hard to miss the pervasive sense of social breakdown. People bemoan the dysfunction of Congress and the rabid political and cultural polarization among us. Culture wars rage, even as commentators try to nuance the discussion and its categories. People scream in school board meetings about mask mandates and the study of the supposedly insidious critical race theory. And then he adds, "Dear reader, one would have thought nothing drier than a school board meeting, and now they are on-demand local theater." Still others attack restaurant workers when asked for proof of vaccination. Banners about defunding the police and the, one would hope, obvious truth that is Black Lives Matter parade through city streets. And meanwhile, forests burn, hurricanes pour down and drown people, and the planet heats up. The Washington Post ran a story that climate activists face a new challenge, namely a perversive anxiety about the future that actually disempowers action. Yet fear of the future is not limited to the climate. And while religion scrambles over each of these social facts, it is more likely seen as a cause or the fuel for the social fire than an answer to any of them. Let's be honest, he writes. The force of social dissolution has gone global, with democratic nations struggling at home, the pandemic surging and killing everywhere, even as protests against vaccine gain steam and victims around the world, and petty tyrants rage against social media. They're pretty harsh words, I think, and maybe he's got some hyperbole in there that makes it even stronger. It's likely that not all of us would agree with everything that Professor Schweikert says, but I do think it's likely we would all agree that we sense this social breakdown that seems to be occurring, that does seem real. But what especially intrigues me, and what I'd love to know what you think about, is his comment that religion is more likely a cause or fuel for the particular fire rather than a solution. What do you think? Religion actually contributing rather than helping our social breakdown? As I came across his article this week, I couldn't help but compare what Professor Schweikert was saying and comparing it to the way that Jesus was talking to his disciples in our gospel reading for today. So if we think Professor Schweikert was using some harsh words and maybe some hyperbole and exaggeration, well, so does Jesus. In fact, I think if you put the two side by side, we might discover that Jesus was even more exaggerated in what he was saying. But instead of bemoaning the state of the world out there, Jesus was forcing the disciples to look in here. He was telling them how important it was to look inward and to assess their own words and actions and how they might prevent stumbling blocks to their community. And if you're wondering what a stumbling block is, well, think things like sin and social breakdown and division and hatred and judgment and all of the things we're struggling with today. Jesus named that reality, and then he begged his disciples with, I think, probably both fury and passion to remove those stumbling blocks and to do whatever was necessary in order to promote peace with one another. Ultimately, he said, we have to have peace with one another. Now, how do we do it? With salt. Well, okay, maybe not literally with salt, but that is one of the metaphors that Jesus was using. And I think if we look at salt more closely, we might garner some ideas for how we ourselves can remove perhaps our own stumbling blocks. We start with recognizing salt can be harmful, right? Too much salt in a body isn't a good thing. Or if you've ever gotten salt on an open wound, that hurts, right? And so maybe on the onset, it's a reminder for us to be careful all the time, to be careful about what we say and where we go and what we do and how we say things and when and where and all those kinds of things. But we also know that when it's used properly, salt has healing properties. We know that salt can, for example, be used to soothe a sore throat, or it can soothe a bee sting, or help with insect bites. We also understand that salt can be a cleansing agent. Just about anything, and salt might help. Brass, wigger, grease spots, wine stains, blood stains, rust stains, coffee pots, sink drains, yellowed clothing. That's only a partial list of the ways in which salt can help with cleaning. Salt can be used to keep the weeds down. Salt can be used to help keep cut flowers fresh. We soak with salt, we de-ice with it, and of course we preserve with it. So, if we're looking for ways in which we can use salt as a metaphor for different things that we can do, we understand that there are lots and lots of different opportunities. Christians, for example, are called to clean things up and to make life better around us. Literally, we will be cleaning up again next Sunday, but clean up in all sorts of ways is a metaphor that we can think about. We also know that as Christians we're called to heal one another and to bring comfort to one another. What about preservation? Well, one commentary I read this week said that Christians are called to be preservatives in society. He argued that without people of faith, society becomes rotten. I have to think maybe we're not doing a good enough job these days in terms of our preservation that we are called to do. But the fact is, there are literally thousands of uses and ways in which we can use salt in the world. And I think in the same way, there might be thousands of ways in which we as Christians can positively influence the world around us. And then, of course, there's that seasoning capacity of salt. When I asked Brandon if he liked salt and he said not too much, I'm guessing he was probably thinking about too much salt on your food or not needing it or those kinds of things. I personally love to watch cooking contests on TV, and while contestants always are remarking on the flavor or the seasoning of a dish, it's always salt that seems to get a cook or a baker in trouble. Either too much salt or not enough seems to send a person home. It's because we know that salt enhances the flavor of whatever it is seasoning. Salt helps both texture and the flavor of just about any food that it graces, from meats to vegetables and even fruits and sweets. Simply put, the right amount of salt can make anything or even everything taste better. And isn't that what we are, as Christians, are called to do as well? Aren't we called to make everything taste better? Called to make the world around us a better place? Promote peace and harmony and love and put away division and anger and hatred. And do it in the right amount. And do it with whatever is placed before us. I don't know about you, but I often think sometimes it seems like the problems of the world are so great you feel paralyzed to do something. But salt seasons one food, one plate at a time, and that's really what we're called to do as well. I do think, though, that all of the different ways that you can use salt also means that all of the different ways we are called to positively influence the world also means it's not necessarily easy. And there's not just one answer or one way. Just like people like to salt their food differently, we are also called to salt our world differently as well. We bring our own talents and skills, as well as our own passions and dreams. And the world needs all of it. The world needs people who can speak up and advocate, and the world needs people who can listen and mediate. And the world needs people who will bring a lonely neighbor over for supper. The world needs people who are willing to teach and to witness. And it needs people who are willing to provide hospitality and service. The world needs people who are willing to give their money to places where it's needed. And the world needs people who are willing to give their time to the places where it's needed. Most of all, the world needs you, a salty Christian, not always sure what to do and how to do it, but one who is determined to make a difference, who's willing to try, who's willing to be poured out and given away just like salt. Amen.